Here are the pros and cons of living in Buford, Georgia. One of the first pros is the public schools in this area. Buford is in Gwinnett County, which is known for having some of the best public schools in the entire state. According to greatschools.org, Ivy Creek Elementary School in Buford is a 9 out of 10, Buford Middle School is an 8 out of 10, and Buford High School is also an 8 out of 10. Now that's according to greatschools.org. If you look at niche.com, that looks a little bit better, and I totally agree. 8 out of 10 seems a little low. I would say they're probably closer to like a 9 out of 10 in my opinion, for whatever that's worth. But I think those schools in Buford are excellent, and especially the residents here in Buford, they all know that these schools here are excellent. What's up, y'all? My name is Victor with Atlanta Suburban Living. We put out videos every week about what it's like to live in Atlanta and the suburbs around Atlanta. Another big pro of living in Buford is its proximity to Lake Lanier. Lake Lanier is like one of the biggest, if not the biggest lake in all of Georgia, and there is a ton of outdoor things to do on Lake Lanier. People are always taking their boats out there. My family and I love taking the kayaks out there. My son loves fishing out there. I also love fishing with my son out there, although it is certainly a test of patience with a 9-year-old. And then there's lots of hiking trails and walking trails all around the lake. There's like no end of things to do around Lake Lanier. You could do something there every day for a year and still not do it all, because Lake Lanier is a massive lake there right next to the city of Buford. Another big one is the amount of like stores, shops, and restaurants there in Buford. In fact, Mall of Georgia, which is the largest mall in all of the state, is there in Buford. I know malls are kind of going out of style a little bit, but they've done a great job with the Mall of Georgia of kind of keeping it more modern. But it does have a lot of the typical mall stores: Gap, Old Navy, Macy's, Foot Locker. Like Foot Locker, I was thinking, getting ready for this video, Foot Locker is like only ever in malls. Like if malls went completely out of business, Foot Locker would just go out of business too. You never see a Foot Locker that's like outside of the mall, like by itself. Maybe there is. I'm sure someone will make a comment about how there is. I just rarely ever see a Foot Locker that's not in a mall. But anyways, all of the typical stores are there in Mall of Georgia. They also have like an outdoor space there with that synthetic green lawn that we see in many other city centers, like they have in downtown Alpharetta. And so that synthetic green lawn, big wide open space for the kids to play, they also have that there at Mall of Georgia. Another pro of living here in Buford is the growing job market. If you're planning on moving here, or you just have any questions about what it's like to live in this city, feel free to call, text, or email me anytime. I'm a local real estate agent here in the area. Thank you so much to everybody who has reached out. I'm always happy to help, even if you just have a question about what it's like to live in Buford. But the growing job market is a big one that brings a lot of people to this area, especially things like healthcare or like logistics, distribution, 18-wheel distribution centers. There's a lot of those. But healthcare is a big one here in Buford. They've got a lot of nearby hospitals. Northside Medical Center is one of these like hospital brands that is kind of like all over the state of Georgia. Northside Buford is around here. Northside Forsyth is very close to Buford. Also, Gwinnett Medical Center is very close to here. So plenty of major hospitals and major healthcare facilities in this area. Oh, and then of course, education. This is a big one too, because this is such like a big draw for many people, is the public school system here in Gwinnett County. The education system also hires a lot of people, so lots of jobs in that field as well. Another big pro for many people of living in Buford is that it's a very family-friendly area. In fact, I would say the majority of the demographic of the people who live in Buford is families. They're there for the public schools, and they're there for all of the different amenities of living in Buford. And so lots of families here. It's a very safe area as well. Definitely a family-friendly area, Buford. And then speaking of amenities for Buford, Buford is in Gwinnett County, and so you have Gwinnett County Libraries, Gwinnett County Education, Gwinnett County Fire and Police Department. These are all very good. There's also Bogan Park Community and Aquatic Center. And then Gwinnett County has a bit of a public transit system. It's not like it's very widely used, but they do have a small public transit, so that's super helpful. Another big one for many people, including my family and I in Buford, is the racial diversity that you can find here. This is so important for many people. According to a website called datausa.io, Gwinnett County is 48% white, 11% Black or African American, 7% Asian, and about 15% Hispanic. And so it's great to see that they have that kind of racial diversity in that area. This is not something that you see in all of the suburbs of Metro Atlanta, so certainly a highlight of living here. Now, of course, there are some downsides to living in Buford because every city is going to have its good and its bad. And if you're planning on moving to Buford, you really want to have the whole picture. And so let's talk about some of these downsides so you really understand what it's like living here. One of these is the confusion with the zip codes. There are parts of Buford that have like a 30215 zip code, but it's also Sugar Hill, or Google Maps will say that it's Sugar Hill, but the Postal Service will say that it's Buford. And so you don't know, like, what part of the city am I living in? Do I live in Sugar Hill? Do I live in Buford? Do I live in Cumming? Or do I live in Suwanee? And so all of these suburbs are very close to each other, and there's a really large, like, residential area. It's like the Bermuda Triangle of zip codes, kind of south of Lake Lanier and east of Cumming and west of Buford. There's this little, actually it's a giant residential area where all of these cities kind of meet together. And so sometimes it's kind of confusing which city you live in, but if you do a little bit of digging and asking the Postal Service, they will certainly tell you which city you live in there. Another downside is the price of the homes here in Buford, especially considering how far it is from the city of Atlanta. Typically, when you're moving to Metro Atlanta, the farther away you get from Atlanta, the lower the home prices are. The closer to Atlanta, the more expensive the home prices are. And so the other part about that is the farther away you are, the more traffic you're going to deal with to Atlanta. So it's very often this trade-off of like the homes cost less, but there's more traffic, versus the homes cost more because I'm closer to Atlanta, but there's less traffic. This trade-off is something that every Metro Atlanta resident deals with on a daily basis. And so you want to kind of find the sweet spot of home prices, price per square foot, versus the amount of traffic you're going to deal with if you're working in Atlanta. In my opinion, Buford is kind of in a bad spot there because they are far from Atlanta. So you got a lot of traffic, but it's also more expensive. It's not like Buford is super inexpensive because of its distance. It's a very popular suburb. The schools, the amenities, the Lake Lanier, all of the things make a lot of people want to live here. And so it's far, but it's also expensive. For example, Buford is about 36 miles from Midtown Atlanta, but the average home price here is about $650,000. Compared to the city of Canton, which is also about 38 miles from Atlanta, and the average home price is about $500,000. Or the city of Ackworth, which is about 31 miles from Midtown, average price point of about $400,000, or Villa Rica, which is about 35 miles from Midtown, with an average price point of about $300,000. So while Buford is great and there are a lot of amenities there, you can certainly find cities that have lower priced homes that are equally distant from Atlanta. Another downside is certainly going to be the traffic congestion from Buford to Atlanta. One of the main roads that you would take from Buford to Atlanta is Interstate 985 and Interstate 85, and these are notorious for having terrible rush hour traffic. Another con is like limited nightlife. Again, this is a family-friendly suburb, and so this is not a city where you're going to have like a bunch of things to do in the evening. This is more like a city where everything is going to close at around 9, maybe 10 p.m. Another downside is lots of development here, lots of construction going on. And so this could be good, in the long run, they're doing a lot of great things in this city, but kind of in the short term, there is traffic and congestion and construction here and there. Like all of these things are going on very regularly in the city of Buford. And then another con of this area, and it's kind of similar for a lot of different parts of Metro Atlanta, but it's certainly something that you got going on in the city of Buford, is the amount of tall pine trees that we have in this city. Many people, especially visitors, they kind of see these super tall pine trees that we have here, and they're like picturesque and beautiful, and they're like, they look really nice, and it certainly helps with like the feel of the city. But pine trees are one of these trees that kind of grows super tall, and they don't have a very long lifespan. And so when you hear of pine trees being very close to people's homes, you're often advised to remove those pine trees because they tend to, again, have a short lifespan, and they can tip over and destroy houses or cars or all kinds of things. And so these tall pine trees, they look really cool, but they can be problematic. In addition to that, they also cause a lot of pollen. So for people with seasonal allergies, like I have seasonal allergies, I regularly have to take like one of these daily allergy pills to help with the amount of pollen and all of the other things that cause seasonal allergies. And a lot of those things come from the pine trees. Of course, whether or not you're going to move to this area really has a lot to do with how this city feels and looks, and like the vibe of the city. You know, like your perspective is super important. If you come from a big city and you know, New York or LA, then you're going to feel like Buford is kind of a small town, like a super small town actually. But if you come from like a small town in Midwest America, then you're going to feel like Buford is a very big city. Like there's a lot going on here. And so what this city feels like to you and what it looks like to you is certainly going to be one of the biggest factors for whether or not you choose this city. Of course, this can be very difficult if you're coming from another part of the country. It's hard to know what the city feels like. So I went on a tour of the city of Buford, walking around the different parts of the city to give you a good idea of what that downtown area is like and what the city is like. You can check out that video right here. I'll see you in the next one.